The Shipwrecked Sailor by Gabriel Garcia Marquez is based on the story of Alejandro Velasco, a sailor who survived a shipwreck in the Caribbean in 1959. The story begins with Velasco's eagerness to return to Colombia after a long stay in the United States. However, the ship he set sail on is overloaded, and when it encounters heavy waves, 8 crew members were washed overboard, including Velasco. After 4 days, the search for the missing ends and they are declared dead. Velasco finds a raft and drifts for 10 days before arriving on the coast of Colombia. He is initially received with affection but later with military honors and money from the media. The story's themes are hope, heroism, and survival. The moral of the story is perseverance through difficult times. My first experience was that I was utterly alone in the middle of the ocean. The ship plunged into an abyss and disappeared. I had no idea what was happening. I took hold of one of the bobbing crates and stupidly began to contemplate the sea. It was perfectly clear day except for the choppy waves produced by the wind and the cargo scattered across the surface. There was no evidence of a shipwreck. Soon I began to hear shouts nearby. Through the sharp whistling of the wind, I recognized the voice of Julio Amador Carabello, the tall, well-built officer who was yelling at someone, Fatso, hold there. It was as if in that instant I had awakened from a moment's deep sleep. It dawned on me that I wasn't alone in the sea. There, only a few meters away, my mates were shouting to one another and trying to stay afloat. Quickly, I began to think. I couldn't swim in just any direction. I knew we were about 250 miles from Cartagena, but I was not yet frightened. For a moment, I thought I could hold on to the crate indefinitely until help arrived. It was reassuring to know that all around me other sailors were in the same predicament. That was when I saw the raft. So, in the story, the speaker's experience of a shipwreck is being explained, and first he told that he's in the middle of the sea, middle of the ocean, and he was completely alone. And the ship plunged into an abyss and disappeared. That was his situation, and he has no idea of what was happening. The men had a great time during their stay in Mobile. They made friends, partied, danced, and drank many nights away. Louis became close to a young woman named Mary Address while he was stationed there. Several nights before they were to embark onto the trip back to their port city, Cartagena, Colombia, they watched a movie together. They all enjoyed the Cane Mutiny, but the storm that the men encountered in the movie gave Louis a feeling of unease. He had never been fearful of a voyage in the ocean before, but he could not get the image of the storm in the movie out of his mind. But when they started out and go deep into the Gulf of Mexico, the waters seemed calm and the weather was ideal. Louis began to forget about his premonitions. But as the Caladas ventured on and entered the Caribbean Sea, the conditions rapidly worsened. Although the skies were beautiful and clear blue, the waters were choppy and the winds were inexplicably strong. So he faced so many difficulties throughout this journey. There was change in the weather conditions and the strong tides were occurring and the ship rocked so violently that Louis and the other men couldn't sleep. In the middle of the night, they were ordered to stand on one side of the deck in an attempt to right the ship as it was strongly listing in one direction. But a huge wave encompassed the ship, and the next thing Louis knew, he was underwater. So Louis got trapped on the water. He began swimming up and thinking that he was still on the ship. But as he surfaced, he saw that the ship was off in the distance and he was in the water. He clung to a crate that had been swept from the ship and then pulled himself up into a life raft, one of several that had been launched by those still on the ship. So that crate was his last hope. With he clung to it, and it was launched by the people in the ship, and finally he got some ray of hope. Once in the raft, he saw two shipmates in the water nearby. He struggled to row towards the two men, but a wave washed over them and they vanished. The other man tried to swim toward him, but he was too exhausted and succumbed to the water. He was devastated to see the ship moving away in the other direction. Louis was alone and lost at sea. That night, it was so dark that Louis could not see the palm of his hand before his face. So it was really a struggle for him, and the situation got really worse. But as he looked up, he had never seen so many stars in his life. Although terrified and devastated to see three of his mates and probably drowned, he was almost certain that planes and helicopters would be out the next day to rescue him.